Welcome to Rauta's Underground Trio. Once again, 3 different bands, a little bit different styles as well, and 2 different countries. First, quickly, in alphabetical order, and mind you, these are all from Godz War Production, so thank you, Poland, for getting these to me. First, we have a Corruptor. This is from France, with the second album from the very band. Then we have a Frightful from Poland, What Lies Ahead. And finally, the debut album from France. This is Hexekration Rites. And French stuff. Now, what these bands do have in question is the amount of death metal. However, they are not carved exactly one on the same tree, but there are differences. Now, let's put them in the order, I would say, worst to best. None of them are bad, but none of them are really great either. More like decent stuff from all of these bands. First, I'll introduce you to Frightful. And this one is from Poland, 2016. Second album by these guys. And according to Metal Archives, they used to be more like death grind. But they have changed their style. But to be honest, I haven't heard their previous material. There's like a couple of EPs, 1 album, 1 demo. I'm checking out Metal Archives while I'm talking to you in case you're wondering what I'm doing here. And nowadays the style is more like death thrash, but there's quite a lot of melodic metal in the mix. Thinking about the so-called Swedish style from the 90s. And while that kind of a combination doesn't sound exactly unique, I mean, there are bands like, At the Gates and the like. Well, let's put it this way. This was more like a hybrid than a lot of those other bands. So this doesn't really evoke a single band in my head, but more like a combination of bands coming to my mind. And the music is somewhat up tempo, but not like super fast. Nothing is really like, hey, let's go really high speed. And that's where you have the kind of a basic stuff going on. You have some parts which are really thrashy, and for a while I was thinking this is just thrash metal with a little bit of vibe from other genres. But then there are clearly those death metal parts, and even though more so those so-called mellow death parts. And when you put them all together, it's like hard to just pinpoint one genre and say this is above others. This is indeed melodic death metal with thrash. And with that, this kind of reminds the Swedish style. Obviously, you can hear maybe a little bit of hints like The Crown or The Haunted or stuff like that. But obviously, Swedes do it a little bit different fashion. Now, Frightful problem, in my opinion, is that they don't really focus on each and single style too much. It's almost like, let's go a little bit that direction, a little bit there, and a little bit that. And that's where you get this weird of a hybrid. I mean, all these parts fit together quite nicely. But it also gives you a little bit feeling that they are a bit unfocused, like lost at sea. I mean, this is not as melodic as it could be, way more memorable, catchy and all. Yet at the same time, this doesn't really feel heavy and brutal enough for death metal. Nor really that thrashy as it could be. So, maybe it's just me, but I don't like too many of these hybrid bands when they're like, instead of picking, some of the best of both worlds, but rather in the middle, compromising their styles. And that's the problem with Frightful. But that being said, decent production, easy to listen, nothing too much to complain. It's just that nothing really stands out. This is more like the basic stuff which you do in early years, and then you want to finally have figured out what to do. You will nail the style. Still, at this point, too much work in progress. The second one is debut album from France. This is a little bit newer band and was founded in 2018. Couple of EPs out there, and then this debut album. Now, Metal Archives lists this as death black band, and to a certain degree I do understand why, because technically speaking there is a lot of black metal elements with this album. Looks, by the way, very nice, this non-glossy three-folding digipack, if you ask me. And of course, with the aesthetics and all, this gives you quite a bit of a black metallic take than, say, death metal-like take. But musically, this is death metal with black metal in the mix. Calling it blackened death metal probably gives you a better idea of the music rather than calling it black death. Because to be honest, this doesn't sound too much like black death, like it's 50-50. More like there's this black and sinister eerie feeling to it. But the riffs, the sound, the growling vocals, everybody here points to death metal more. So I would say this is more like 70-30 death metal, black metal, or maybe even 80-20. So definitely focus is more on the, death metal thing. And of course, growly vocals emphasize that feeling, those quite down-tuned sounding guitars, Some of the riffs are very, very simplistic, kind of a let's go back to punk. So kind of a early 90s kind of a vibe with this one. So definitely dark presence right there with the riffs and, songwriting. But still more on the death metal side of things. But probably something that if you are a big fan of death black kind of a thing, probably right up your alley. The complaint goes to the songwriting. While this is very easy to listen and enjoy the atmosphere and all, you kind of clearly figure out there are no hit songs. There are no really memorable parts with it. Like, hey, this is really nailing it. So to me, it sounds like they are really making the kind of demo phase steps here. So easy to listen once again, but nothing really here is like, wow, this is something different. More like, hey, we want to do something of those big boys before us, but we are still figuring out how to do it so it sounds like our own. I'm not too big on demanding any kind of originality, but at least have some hooks, some catchiness, some memorable parts, so you will be found among thousands and thousands of other bands of given style. Then, the best of the pile, in my opinion, is Corruptor, and this is also from France, 2021, so the newest one of the pile here, and 2 albums out. And this is kind of a thrashy album with death metal in mix, and also quite old school as such. There's fundamentally nothing new here, nothing revolutionary, nothing exactly standing out, but somehow these guys maintain the flow and the feel like, yeah, this is actually quite enjoyable. Not to say the others aren't, but this is, in my opinion, the most focused with the given style and more like we know what we are doing. We're not figuring out anymore of any of these, genre hybrids, but more like focusing like, let's get the thrash engine going on and put a little bit death metal in the mix. And while this could be indeed a lot more memorable and also better sounding, it's just like these guys have indeed more focused, more honed, more polished that given style. And by polished, I don't mean that this is sounding like some sterile, big band production and all that stuff. But there is something in this engine that makes it roll smoother and at the same time more powerful, as opposed to the ones that I mentioned briefly. So while these are roughly in the same box of quality and a little bit of style as well, after all, these are all death metal related bands, even if not pure blood, this one just somehow sounds a little bit better than the rest. Sometimes putting these into order from worst to best sounds like very, very hard, because sometimes 2 bands are like, I could go with the either one, doesn't matter. And the same applies to this particular pile of CDs as well. I mean, really, any given day I could just easily listen to one another, but obviously when I have to figure out my favorite, yeah, that's how it goes. Now, it's up to you whether you give this one a listen or not, but links are provided in the description box. Give it a chance and I hope you like them. Signing off, bye.